Hey, what's up there, everyone? It's Odin here on this Sunday evening. And I'll tell you what, it is, it's colder than a vampire's demeanor outside. And it's just been that way for quite a few days now. And I think everyone across the country is dealing with that. And I dealt with it a little more than I wanted to this weekend. And I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But first, just wanted to let you know that I'm getting a new microphone here soon. This one has been sounding like pure ass lately. It's not so bad on these videos, but it's still not good. And it's gotten worse. It used to be a very cheap mic that worked fine. But now it's kind of gotten past its lifespan, I guess. And so I've had a new one on order for a little while, but on the man cave on Thursday, excuse me, I'll take a drink and warm my belly in this cold weather. On the man cave on Thursday, everything was fine, and then at the end of the show, they do like the round robin. They pull you up full screen, say, where can we find you? What are you up to? What do you want to show? And when it came my turn, the microphone just stopped working. Like, just completely stopped. I looked at StreamYard, I checked my connections, everything looked like it was working. But I was a total mute. And there they were. All the cast of the man cave making fun of me. While I was just dumb. Literally dumb. No. Dumb to them. But they just left me up on full screen, so I just bolted. I'm like, I don't have to take this abuse. I'm out of here. But that was just kind of like, you can't hear me. I'm pantomiming, whatever. So I'm like, yeah, I need a new mic, but I already had it. Like, I had it in my cart on Amazon. I was like, send it. I need it. But then yesterday morning, was the Red Valkyrie Underground Art Auction, which Cy and Shay put on every so often and every couple times a year. And they were gracious enough to ask me to be part of it again, and I was like, yeah. Well, I committed to that several months ago, and then I've been ridiculously busy, forgot all about it, and then I didn't promote it like a damn fool. And then when I start remembering that I got to do it, getting tagged in things, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that. Well, what I really should have been doing is going to the licensing department, which is only open for a small window on Saturdays. They only open till noon, and they close at 5 on weekdays, and I work till 5 on weekdays. And so I had this little window, but I made the commitment to go on the show, do the underground art auction. And I was excited to do it, but like I said, I didn't promote it the way I should, and I didn't and I had other things I should have been taking care of. But that's not their fault, and I made the commitment, so I went on. I didn't sell anything, but I kind of sold something. So it was kind of a bit of a screwy situation. So my friend, I call him a friend now, I guess. You see him in chats as Tokame LLC, but Seth, as he's also known, is as his name is. Threw down a bid. So I had my first art auction piece up. No one had bid on anything the whole morning, and I think I was like the fourth person. I put my first piece up, nothing. And then at the very end, after I'm done, after my countdown expired, and they go to the next piece, and Tokame comes in with a bid, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's awesome! He's bidding on this one." And then, and the next piece was awesome too. And I'll tell you about that. But he's like, "No, that was for Odin's piece." Everyone goes, "Oh," and he's like, "Sorry, my internet was laggy, and like I just." And I totally get it, and that sucks. And so it became kind of an awkward situation because they're like, well, are you bidding on this one? Or, Odin's piece is already passed. You could work that out with him, blah, blah, blah. But the next piece was so badass. It was one that I personally almost wanted. Or not almost. Personally did want, but I didn't want to spend money. I didn't have any money, but or money I wanted to spend. And it was a full color. I think it was like 11 by 17, but it was Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, in the foreground, about waist up, beautifully drawn tits, and the colors were great. Her face, she was beautiful, and she's there in the foreground. In the background, you see trees, and you see a sign that says Camp Crystal Lake Campground, and it's such a cool crossover, but it was so well drawn, so well colored. I was like, oh, that's a badass piece. And so I tried to make everything right. I say, Tokame, Seth, your bid is for this next piece, and I'm just going to send you the one that you meant to bid on, which was my piece. I'm just going to send it to you. And the reason why I did that was, well, several-fold, twofold at least. One was that he broke the bidding cherry, and no one had bid on anything yet to that point. And I was pretty happy, and I didn't want the first bid to be like a weird thing. Plus, I thought that other piece was super cool, and I thought somebody should bid on that, but nobody was in a bidding mood, so I didn't think it was going to get any. So I was like, well, it should get some money and get sent out. So I was like, you get that one, I get this one. But the main reason actually was that Seth had done a submission for the Kill Them Dead art contest, a kick-ass, badass submission. Now, it didn't win, and unfortunately there was a lot of kick-ass submissions that didn't win. The ones that did win were all kick-ass as well. But what he did that was super cool, because like for Luke Aglietta's piece, he was one of the winners, but I bought that one on the auction. The last time there was the auction, he had that one up, and I was like, I'm buying it because I wanted it. With Seth's piece, he just reached out to me. He said, I'm going to send you the original art. And I'm like, well, you don't have to do that. I'm like, and not that you would be trying to schmooze, but I'm not a judge, so it's not going to sway the judging. But he says, no, I want to send it. And I'm like, dude, that's super cool, man. I appreciate it. And it's so badass. I got it here. We can pull it up. Might be best to throw it here. This was such a kick-ass piece, and like in person, it's so much better. But hopefully, here you can see this metallic gold that he used as trim highlights, and then for the lettering, and then the blue on Hell's hands, and so apparently you spindle it right on her neck, which is right in the center. If this were a record, a 12-inch record. And then as it spins, the Kill Them Dead over here and the runes and the gold, I think he tried to calculate it out perfect to where it would just look optimal and badass. And it was such a kick-ass piece. Like, words can't describe. So, like I said, he didn't win. There was tons of awesome pieces, but this was one of my absolute favorites. And the fact that he wanted to send it to me just because. And so when it came to that thing where he was bidding on one of my pieces of art, and then it became weird, I was like, dude, you're getting a 2-for-1 today. I want you to get this other kick-ass piece, but I'm going to send you. And this is the one. I've shared it out on social media and stuff, so you may have seen it, but it's in the frame, but we'll get glare all over the place. It's the Mighty Thor. I can only show it here like if it was sideways, I think. Because I'd run right into the... So, yeah, we have to do it like this. The Mighty Thor with Thor there giving Loki the business. Old school logo with Hela in the background. And happy to get that out to Seth for being awesome, and because he meant to send money for it. The thing is, I don't, money. It's fine. Like I I mostly do those auctions is more to keep my name out there and hope people like, just to get cool stuff into people's hands. But I hate shipping things out, so I'm like, I was almost like, I don't want anyone to win because I'm selling these for less than I really want to sell them for, just to try to get them sold. And get them into people's hands, keep my name out there, do whatever, but in the end, it's more, I'm happy to send this to Seth and he doesn't have to pay me. He got a really kick-ass piece already, so. So anyway, back to the mic thing. My mic sounded like shit that whole auction. I mean, it was bad. Like, I watched a little bit of the replay. I was like, I knew my mic was bad, but I can't tell in the moment. And then I go back and watch. I'm like, oh, man, it sound like ass. So hopefully get the new mic here soon. It doesn't sound as bad on here, but it did sound bad on the auction, like really bad. My internet was bad. I couldn't show up the art pieces properly. It was all pixely and gross. And so anyway, that was Saturday morning, and then I missed my window. But Saturday evening, we do Saturday Night Leaped on the Broken Compass Entertainment channel. And that's just for fun. It's just a shit show, just shit talking, having fun. Not really even promoting anything. It's just for fun. And I was looking forward to that. I'm like, that'll be fun. Our guest had to back out. It was Derek Mathers. He was a NHL, a former NHL player. Big old monster of a dude now. Like, he was a monster back in the day. Because a lot of these guys are freaking huge, but he kept himself trim, and now he's just like a monster because he's like, I don't give a fuck anymore. But apparently he's funny as hell. I don't know him. James knows him, and he had to cancel, couldn't make the show, so that was a bust. But anyway, about an hour, no, more like 2 hours before the show starts, I'm just sitting here, drawing or whatever, and then just like that, the power goes out. I'm like, power goes out. This is my new place, whatever, And I'm like, well, that's not optimal. It's like I said, it's cold as a witch's teat outside, and the power going out, it's not a good thing. Now, it's been cold across the country, so you're probably all dealing with it, everybody. I honestly thought this far south, when I moved here anyway, like knowing how broad the cold has been across the country lately, I'm not surprised. But when I first moved here, I was like, it's much further south than I've ever been before, so it's probably warmer in the winter, but sub-zero temperatures lately, so that's not warm. It's cold. It's cold. And as I think about it, I need another drink. Warm the belly at least. But the power goes out a couple hours before the show, and then I hit up James. Like, hey, man, not going to make it. I don't think, at least not at the beginning because the power's out. And it kind of set in for me. I wasn't like panicky or anything, but I'm like, I just got in this place. I hadn't really set up things for preparedness. And I'm like, oh, where's the flashlight? I'm like, well, I got my phone flashlight. I know I have a candle over here. I can light that. But at a certain point, I go, I don't know when the power's coming back on, right? And I'm thinking about pipes freezing. I'm thinking about all these things. I'm like, I don't want to go out and like, it's fucking cold. I don't want to go out and shut the water main off. I don't want to do all this stuff. I don't want to deal with frozen pipes for sure. Yeah, just move into a place and first thing you have is bursting pipes and freezing, and yeah, just like, man, what a nightmare. Please don't have to deal with that, hopefully. So, um, my thought was, well, I'm going to rest and try to stay warm, even though it was like warm still. It didn't take long. The house is pretty well insulated. And so I just kind of like bundled up, got under covers, like just take a rest, go to sleep for a while, because at this point it's like midnight. But my mind's just racing, thinking about preparedness and what if you didn't have your phone? What are you gonna do if the power stays off? All this stuff. Um, so I didn't actually sleep. Well, anyway, about almost 4 hours after it went out, the power came back on. It was noticeably colder in the house, but it wasn't like frozen. It wasn't like the outside came inside. It was colder. Um, but I mean, the power came on, so there was a false start. The power came on for like 2 seconds and then shut back off. And then about a half hour later, it came on full time. But um, anyway, and then I was able to jump onto the show for the last hour or so, and it was fine. But I was thinking about what would I do if the power stayed off. Like if I rested for a while, I woke up, it was still off. I'd have to go. That was my plan: is just shut off the water main, drain the pipes as much as possible so they don't freeze over. And I was like, and in the meantime, while I'm doing all that, I'll have the Jeep running so that it can warm up. And then I go, and worst case scenario, I get a hotel room or something. And hopefully hopefully the entire area is not without power. I'm like, I'll drive till I find a freaking hotel room if I have to, because I had no preparedness. I don't have an alternate heat source. Someday I want to have a generator system set up. But when I first moved in, I'm like, just move in. You'll get that stuff. You'll figure these things out over time. And I'm like, well, what if I didn't have time to figure those things out over time? What would be my long-term answer? Like I said, I had my phone. I could call. So I called the electric company, let them know the power's out. I could call whatever, call a hotel and reserve a room. I could do whatever. And I had the Jeep I could drive, or the car, and, stay warm that way at least. Run the car, and even if I have to just keep filling it up with gas, as long as the gas stations have power, I'd be all right. But I go on down the line of like what ifs, and that's why I couldn't sleep at all. I'm just like, yeah, but then what would I do? And so anyway, that's good for preparing for worst case scenarios and all that stuff. But anyway, power came back on. Got a little cold, but we're fine. So yeah, that's that. Like I said, this cold across the country. Yeah. So I was watching football this weekend when I could. So my internet's also been shit, and I don't use anything else. I don't have TV. I have internet. So I was watching the Kansas City game, and Kansas City is not that far from me. It's a couple hours away. It's to the north, so it's going to be colder. But that game in Kansas City, the Miami-Kansas City game, was when it started at kickoff, it was like the fourth coldest game in the history of the NFL. But I think when it ended, it was much higher or much colder. So it was like moved up the ranks in coldest games ever. So that's crazy. I was like, yeah, they were right up the road for me. I mean, not right up the road, but a couple hours away. And yeah, they were colder. But like I said, in southern Missouri, I figured I was, in my mind, I'm like, I'm further south now. Should be warmer. Should not have this shit in the winter. But no, we do. So yeah, sub-zero temperatures. I mean, it's kind of been hovering around zero. Like during the day, you get up to like midday today, I went out and had to get some shit. and driving around, the temperature gauge in the car said like 1, 2, and that's Fahrenheit. So Celsius, that's like -15 or something, but, or -20, I don't know. So anyway, football was fun. There's a good game going on right now. Last I checked, the score was really competitive. That's the Rams and the Lions. But my internet is out, so I've just been checking the score on my phone. Can't actually watch the game, but which is fine. I got to make a video. So, and then the earlier game today. There's 3 constants, at least ever since Emmitt Smith retired. There's 3 constants in the world: death, taxes, and the Cowboys choking in the playoffs. And I like Dak Prescott, but he's kind of developed the MO of not rising to the occasion of higher competition or the big moment. So, and again, he shit the bed. The entire team shit the bed again. Lost to the Packers in the divisional round. And then he got Rams and Lions, which I think is a great game. There's a lot of story there with Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. And I also think the coaching dichotomy, because I really like Dan Campbell as a coach. He's a heart coach. And then you've got McVay, who's like an X's and O's coach. And it's like the difference, but definitely pulling for the Lions at this point when my team's long since not been a playoff team. I go, well, who am I rooting for? Well, all my teams are going down that I want to continue in the playoffs. I'm intrigued by the Texans with a rookie quarterback, and but I would love to see the Lions. I was really hoping, I'm like, this is pipe dream. Somebody who doesn't have any skin in the game, is just a fan of the NFL. I was kind of hoping for a Lions-Browns Super Bowl. I was like, that would be odd and cool. Like, these two teams that have just notoriously throughout the years been bad, playing in the Super Bowl would be cool. But Browns lost. That's not going to happen. Lions, just to see the Lions in the Super Bowl would be really cool. I would love that. I doubt they're getting there. If I had to put money on it, it would be arguably what everyone else would put money on, which is, San Fran versus Baltimore. But I don't want that Super Bowl. I didn't like that Super Bowl the first time they did it. With the brothers. Was it the brothers playing each other? I think Jim Harbaugh was the coach at San Francisco at the time. Jim and John Harbaugh. And the lights went out at halftime. I remember that. Or Kaepernick was a quarterback, but I think Flacco was the quarterback too. Anyway, I hate both those teams. I'm not a fan, so I was like, yeah, I don't want to see that that Super Bowl. So right now, with what teams are left, I'm hoping for the Bills or the Texans on the AFC side. And then the Lions would be cool. Yeah. Well, whoever wins this game, the Lions or the Rams, are basically... the Packers would be interesting, but I mean, I've seen enough Packers in the Super Bowl. I get tired of seeing the same teams. Unless it's my team. And it hasn't been my team in a long time, so... but anyway, that's enough football talk. So here you can see I'm working on another Kill Them Dead page. I think the last video I made, this was what was showcased, but you could barely see any of it. So now it's a little more fleshed out. It's actually pretty close to being done. To the side that you can't see, like over here. There's still more to do, but this side's pretty much done. Some of this stuff with pencil, I've noticed, like, as you're drawing, some things get faded, and you have to go back and, like, darken them back up. So I'll go back and do that in some spots. But yeah, just working on that. Then when I'm done with this page, I'll alternate back to some shove so I can get my inking fix because I like inking and I miss it. I mean, it's so tempting not to want to, or it's so tempting not to, because obviously I want to ink these pages. This would be fun to ink. I want to ink these pages. I'm like, oh, but no, you don't. That's not the order of operations. You just want to do that because it'd be fun. But also because I pour so much into these that I'm like, oh, now I want to see that boldness that inking could generate on these pages. And plus, I don't pencil this tight for myself, so it'd be fun to ink my own stuff with tighter pencils and see what that's like. But as it stands, Sebastian's working on the other two that I've done, and then this one's coming up. We've got some intensity going on more and more. The story doesn't slow down, and it's nonstop action. So this kind of pace, this kind of craziness on each page is about what you're going to expect for the most part. So it's exciting. It's fun. Let's see. Throughout the week, I've been, again, like I was talking about, going through my Twilight Zones. It's just been great. I love it. Season 3 is where I'm at, and I kind of think it might be my favorite season. Now, again, it's mostly favorite episodes because each season has like 30 freaking episodes. So it's not like, you're going to have some hits and some misses every season for sure. But there's so many great actors, like famous actors, known for other stuff and very minorly known for their little part they played in these Twilight Zone episodes. So in season 3, there's an episode called The Mirror, which is one of my favorites. So many good episodes, but this is one of my favorites. It's got Peter Falk. Most of you know as Columbo. Columbo, he's got the cigar. Yeah, it's Columbo, But it's such a different character. So he plays like a Cuban or Puerto Rican, or he's a working class guy who overthrows a tyrant and becomes the leader of the nation, but he's also becomes a tyrant, and it's it's got a definite moral in it as far as that, like becoming the thing you hate and all that kind of stuff. But man, Peter Falk did such a great job. If I didn't know that he wasn't Cuban, I would have thought, because he played it so well. He was excellent. And it's just a great episode conceptually, and the acting was great. And then there was one, The Grave. And The Grave stars Lee Marvin. And anytime, anything with Lee Marvin, I friggin' love Lee Marvin. One of the coolest actors ever. He just carried such a boldness, and his voice was deep and commanding. It was powerful. And he just had that about him, and big old dude, and just carried that. He, now the story of The Grave, though, I remember reading basically an adaptation or a variation of the same story when I was in, like, I don't know, second grade or something. And it was in this, like kids horror anthology book. And not scary stories or something like that. Or maybe it was, I don't know. But it was something like that. It was just, they were tame, scary stories for kids. And the story was the one that I read when I was a kid, and I'd never seen the Twilight Zone episode. Or I don't remember if I had. Was there's a group of kids, and there's a legend that if you go to this grave, if you go to this, say, witch's grave or whatever, it was some grave that the dead person would reach up and grab you. And the one kid, to prove he wasn't scared of this legend, had to go there, and they said, you have to stick your knife into their grave so we know that you went there. And so the kid goes there, spooky and everything and ominous, and goes to stick his knife in, and the wind catches his coattail, and he sticks the knife into his coattail. And so when he gets up to leave, he thinks something's grabbing him, and he dies of fright. And so they all find him the next morning. And that's the story that I heard as a kid. Now, the funny thing is, or the interesting thing is that was probably like the first sequential type story I tried to draw, that I remember at least trying to draw. Because I read that story and I thought that was super cool, and I wanted to convey it on paper. And so I was drawing it. It never turned out the way I wanted. I wasn't good enough. I was pretty good for my age, but I wasn't good enough to... But I kept trying, and I remember, so I think it was like second grade, maybe third. And I just thought that was such a cool story, It's like simple. It was an anthology book style short story for kids, horror story. So anyway, then I watched this episode, The Grave. Now, I've watched it several times, but I remember the first time I'm like, that's the same story, So The Grave is... Lee Marvin plays basically a bounty hunter or a assassin, and there's a town, a whole town is under the tyranny basically of this outlaw who grew up there, but he comes back to his hometown and acts like he owns a place and is an outlaw. He's an evil man, right? So the whole town, the episode starts with the whole town got him in the streets with tons of guns on him on all different angles and all different positions, and they're like, we got our guns on you. And Johnny, I can't remember the guy's name, the outlaw's name, but they gun him down in the streets and they kill him. And then they're all hanging out in the bar. That night, Lee Marvin shows up, and he was the assassin the town hired to kill him. And they're like, hey, did you hear? We all gunned down whatever, whoever the outlaw was. We all gunned him down in the street. And they start questioning Lee Marvin's courage, because they're like, maybe you weren't even trying to get him, He said on his deathbed that he even let you know where he was at, and you lagged behind and didn't find him. And Lee Marvin was just great in this. He's like, smacks a guy around. He's like, no one calls me a coward, and it was just great. But he's like, I ain't saying, I'm just saying, So then they said, yeah, and also on his deathbed, he said that if you ever come to his grave, he would reach up and grab you, and pull you in or something like that. And if you're not scared of him, maybe you go to his grave and prove it, and I'll put money down on it. So that's the thing. It made it a little more adult. There was gambling. Like, I'll put $20 worth of gold down that you won't go to his grave and prove that you're not scared. And Lee Marvin's just playing the machismo great. He's like, I ain't scared of nothing, I go there, I got your $20. Let's do this, But that's Lee Marvin, is so cool. Him, Peter Falk, some of these characters that are in these Twilight Zone episodes. So one of the guys that's just in the bar, he's just almost a background character, is Lee Van Cleef, who was Angel Eyes. I mean, Lee Van Cleef's been in a lot of spaghetti westerns, a lot of movies. New York, Escape from New York. He's been in all kinds of shit. But he was just a side character, and he was just a guy putting money down. He's like, yeah, I bet that you won't go out there, Lee Marvin's like, I'll go out there, So So anyway, Lee Marvin goes, and it's black and white, so it's already super ominous and mysterious and dark. And as he's going up, and it's nighttime, and he crosses paths at the edge of the grave, or at the edge of the cemetery, with the guy's sister, the outlaw's sister. And she's like, "Oh, he's gonna get you. He's gonna get you," you know. And he's like, "I ain't scared of nothing," you know, like whatever. I remember he had a great line when he was leaving. They're like, "Aren't you gonna take your gun?" or something like that. And he's like, "I don't get my courage from a gun. I was born with it, you know, or I had it before I could even hold one," or something like that. So anyway, you can tell he's not scared, but he's cautious, and you know, it's like he's well acted. He played it very well. So he goes up to the grave site, kneels down. Super windy day. Goes to stick his knife in. Sure enough, wouldn't you know it? He sticks his knife into his coattail. But you don't know that yet. Like, it just shows him, like, plunge the knife. And as he's getting up, you see the spook on his face. It goes, "Ah," you know, and then cuts to commercial. And it's all the guys at the bar walking out like, "Oh, man, he didn't come back last night. I guess we go check it out, but I'm scared." Like, well, we got to someday not be scared of a dead man, you know? Because this outlaw, his legend had grown, you know, his power was even beyond the grave, you know, had power over these people. So anyway, they go there, and it's actually Lee Von Cleef's character who explains the whole thing, because they see him dead at the gravesite. And he's like, "I see what happened here. He went to plunge his knife in. The wind caught his coat. And as he plunged it in, it went in." But the extra twist on this one was the sister was also there. And she's looking at the scene, and she goes, "What direction was the wind flowing last night?" Because she's like, "Oh, my brother's going to get you," kind of thing. And they're like, "Well, it was blowing from the south." And she's like, "It's blowing the wrong direction for him to have got the wind caught his coattails." She's like, "My brother made that happen," you know. So anyway, then he died of fright, whatever. Great little episode. Mostly why I bring it up is, you know, it's not like the greatest episode. It's somewhat cheesy, but it's Lee Marvin just killing it, and it's Lee Von Cleef. And then I think it was season 3. It might have been season 2. There was a horrible episode, like one of my least favorite episodes, because it was one of the whimsical, funny ones that I just don't like as much. Starring Burgess Meredith, who I love whenever he's in it, and it also had a great cameo with Don Rickles. It's just a side character, but Don Rickles being Don Rickles is, yeah, I'll take it every day. He is great. So there's, you know, as you watch these, you're like, oh man, you know, obviously William Shatner's been in a bunch of bigger episodes, and just seeing these bigger actors is, you know, they weren't as big of actors when they were on there, and that's what's cool, is like it was like a part of their springboarding into their further career. Yeah, so season 3, I mean, there's a bunch of good episodes. Trying to think. Oh, Death's Head Revisited, which I'll always say is one of my favorites. It's where the German concentration camp commander goes back to the concentration camp to relive his glory days, and is visited by a Jewish man's ghost who torments him. It's just very well done. Death's Head Revisited is a great episode. There's so many good episodes in that. So, Little Girl Lost, which is I think that's what it's called, where the girl like gets stuck between dimensions, and there's a lot of like pseudo physics going on, and it was a really good episode. So many good ones. So yeah, I've been watching that. Watch just today, because my internet's been out, so I haven't been able to watch football or whatever. So while I was drawing, I was watching old Simpsons episodes, which I hadn't watched in 20 years. I'm guessing it's been that long, or almost 20, roughly. And I was watching season 5, which I think is like the pinnacle. So there's like season 1's mostly forgettable. Season 2 is pretty good. 3 is great. 4 is great. 5 is great. 6 is great. 7 is great. So there's like this arc, and then there's the cliff that comes shortly after season 10, somewhere in there. But season 5, that's when they're just firing on all cylinders. The jokes were great. The episodes were great. But there's the one. There's so many great lines, and there's this one that got me because it brought me back to a moment. It's when they bring the casino into Springfield, and Mr. Burns builds the casino, and Homer works the casino, but Marge becomes addicted to gambling. And throughout the episode, she's just more and more addicted. But she's supposed to help Lisa, and she promised to help her. She was doing a school play where she was going to be a state. You had to dress up like the state, one of the states of the United States. And she was going as Florida. And her mom wasn't there to help her, even though she promised, because she was addicted to gambling. So Homer helps her and makes her obviously a horrible costume because Homer. But Lisa's like mad that her costume's so bad. She's like sad. She's crying. And she's like, I look like a monster. And this line cracks me up every time. There's so many lines like this, but this one just, like I said, transported me back in time. But Homer said, you're not a monster, sweetheart. There's only one monster here, and it's the gambling monster that took over your mom. I call him Gamblor. And every time that line that he personified her gambling addiction and called him Gamblor, it cracks me up so much. So anyway, the reason why that transported me is because I remember back when I was married, this would happen. I mean, it happens now, but when you're sleeping by yourself, no one knows. But so when I laugh, my whole body laughs, and like I truly belly laugh, like my belly shakes when I laugh, and quite often when it was time to go to sleep, I would lay my head down and I would start thinking of funny shit, and I would start laughing. And I sleep on my belly a lot. Well, I belly laugh and I sleep on my belly, and then the whole bed like shakes when I'm laughing. So when I was married, my ex, she would always know, and she'd be like, are you thinking of The Simpsons? And she would always say that, and I'd be like, yes. And then I'd have to tell her which scene, and she would chuckle. I think she was mostly laughing at how funny I thought it was more than how funny it actually was. But I remember that was one, the Gamblor thing, and I'm just laying in bed like laughing, just chuckling to myself about this term Gamblor. So much so that my belly's shaking in the bed. So anyway, that was transported back to that, which hilarious. But I remember like back when we lived together, we had cats, and the cat would like lay on my belly, and they'd be all comfortable and purring, and then I would think about something funny and start laughing, and the cat would start like rocking on my belly. And then that would make me laugh even harder because how offended a cat can get when they're comfortable. Just watching their face like, you fucker. It would just make me laugh harder until they're like, fine, I'm out of here. So anyway, but Simpsons, like I said, around that time, that little stretch of The Simpsons, I think, is the greatest. Everyone, I talk about the Red Dwarf. It's my favorite show of all time. comedy wise or sitcom wise. Uh, if The Simpsons hadn't fallen off the cliff like they did, and shit on the fan base the way they did, and just course change the way they did, I would say it was the greatest show ever, because that little stretch is some of the funniest, best written, and without it, you don't get, the way they brought in pop culture and old references and things like that had never really been done the way they did it. And so without The Simpsons, and especially in animation, so you don't get, obviously, Family Guy or, South Park, or even like Venture Brothers, who really took that, like a lot of these shows, like The Simpsons set the table and everybody else ate at that table. Unfortunately, they suck now, or I don't know if they're even still on, but I quit paying attention. But they've sucked since season 10 was good. I remember that. I think 11 and 12 were okay, and it just kind of like trailed off, and then it fell off a big cliff shortly after that. But what can you do? But that's why I say Red Dwarf's the best. It never did that. The newer episodes aren't as good, but they're still good. They're still really good. Just not as good. Anyway, I've been running long here. We can wrap this up. It's a new year. We're halfway through the first month of the new year. So if you make resolutions, maybe you maybe the proof is in the pudding now. Maybe you backed out. Maybe you're still going strong, but you might be in the thick of the willpower. But one thing I know is that the cold, as I thought about the survival element of it, the preparedness element of it, let nature every once in a while test your fortitude. It's not bad. Get you thinking in modes that maybe we don't enough. Because nowadays, we don't have we have luxury compared to what our forefathers had as far as modern conveniences. But because they're electronic, or electric or electronic, they can stop instantly. I have no internet right now. This video will go up when it goes up, but I have no internet right now. I can't upload it. And, that sucks. I like having the internet. I probably should have gone with Starlink instead of fucking HughesNet. But I'm in because I paid full price for the router instead of... Anyway, I hear good things about Starlink. I don't know. Nonetheless, these things are finicky. They're only as strong as the source that brings them to you, and they can go away in an instant, and then you're back to au naturel. Everything the way it was before we had these conveniences. So I have appliances that I inherited when I bought this house. They were part of the closing, was that she left them for me. She didn't want to take them, and I was like, yeah, I need appliances, so obviously I'll take them. But they're all smart. They're all touchscreen. They're all these things. The motherboard of the microwave is shot. I haven't investigated it too much, but it's not working. It's just dead. And the only thing I can think of is that it's steam from when I'm boiling water or something, because that's the only thing that could have done it. But I'm like, wouldn't they build these things knowing that this is a built-in over-the-range microwave, that it would be able to handle the steam rising? That wouldn't kill a circuit board or whatever happened? I would think so. But it just died one day after I was cooking a lot of stuff. And that's the only thing I could think of. And I'm not a big fan of these smart touchscreen appliances, because it's almost like too modern to where it's like too easy to fail. It's similar to vehicles. It's like I can work on an old vehicle. I understand the motor, and and the components and everything that goes into it. But once you add all the electronics and the computers, then I'm like, well, it's way out of my element. I don't know what's going on here. Tracking that down is not as easy. So I go, sometimes I just want simplicity. Like, they're like, is this easier? This is a touch screen any easier? No. It just makes it seem more modern. There's nothing easier about it. So I don't know. All that to say, like, every once in a while you need nature to test your fortitude, to remind you that these things are just one simple thing away from going away. You know? And losing power this weekend reminded me of that. So anyway, I'm getting tired. I'm going to wrap this up. I hope that if you had resolutions, you're sticking with them. And if you haven't, don't beat yourself up. Just be awesome. Try your best. But as always, I hope wherever you're at that you're facing all your obstacles with strength and courage and power and a great sense of care and tenderness for those you love, and do all things with integrity. And hopefully it all works out from there. Usually it does, I believe. So with that, I'm going to let you all go. And thank you for sticking around and listening. Until next week, this is Odin. We'll see you.